Okay, so for those joining us on the YouTube channel at this point in time, we had a technical problem and we've made a decision to actually restart the meeting at this hour. So good evening and welcome to this digitally enabled online meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, held on Monday, June 15th, 2020. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I asked the Deputy Clerk to note our starting time now, I guess, for the minutes is 7:10 p.m. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel, and I will be available there, and it will be available there. I'm not going to be there after the meeting as an archived video. I guess I will be there. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. So welcome again for some. For those on YouTube, welcome. We're glad that we got this little technical bug fixed. Again, welcome to councillors and staff and our delegates who are with us tonight to participate in the meeting. We look forward to your participation. We find ourselves in what seems like a landscape with opportunity and landmines. We see movement forward towards cautious reopening of businesses and community venues. A few more people may gather. We have learned about the ability for each person to belong to a circle with one other household. We have seen some movement towards allowing more people to attend weddings and funerals. We have been told to keep all the precautions, but to wind down our emergency childcare center and spin back up our usual childcare center. There are mysteries amongst all of this. There are many changes which can promote confusion, and that can lead to an abandonment of behaviors that we still need in order to make every effort to stave off the second wave. I'll speak bluntly tonight. I think we need renewed commitment to the right behaviors to keep us from future problems with COVID-19. New behaviors such as staying 6 feet or 2 meters apart, the following of directionality arrows and markers in stores. These things are slipping a bit. And I know it isn't popular, but mask wearing in public spaces where physical distancing is compromised just isn't taking hold. We have not hit the point yet where the majority of our citizens, when in public spaces where physical distancing looks challenging, are wearing masks. So I urge you, please, when in public spaces, bring your mask, be ready to wear it. And when physical distancing looks more difficult, please wear it. It shows your concern for others. As most of you have been made aware, I made a very difficult decision related to closure of pools for the 2020 swimming season. Likewise, a measured decision to keep the splash pad closed, although this will be considered a bit later in the summer. These decisions were made using evidence and reason, and I know are not uniformly understood, let alone appreciated. Our corporation is interested in the positive mental health of our community, the physical health of our community, and we are committed to providing equitable access to our facilities where we can. The staff is working hard on alternative summer programming that respects the need for some experiences for our youngest citizens while acknowledging that COVID-19 is real and does harm to people and families. Regrettably, the decisions about the pools, splash pad, and week-long summer day camps aren't the only ones we will face. A few more lie ahead that will cause disappointment and even anger amongst our residents. I continue to urge civility and patience. I continue to urge that we don't surrender the ground that we've gained to notions of competing interests which don't present nearly the same harm to our entire community as COVID-19 truly does. Now let us move into our agenda. Let's turn to item 2.1 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interests. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol, at this time, I invite all councillors with known pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. I have a written declaration from Councillor Behrens. Did you wish to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I will declare a conflict of interest on the accounts 5.4.1 as well as the confirmatory 13.1 as under normal circumstances. And it sounds like it's going to start back up. I have grandchildren that attend the North Perth Spinrite Child and Family Center. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Behrens. And Deputy Mayor Kellum?
Yes, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I will declare pecuniary interest on items 5.4.1 as well, the accounts, specifically to Perth Metals, as well as the confirmatory bylaw 13.1, as my mother and father-in-law are tenants there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. Any other councillors with pecuniary interest to declare at this time? Okay, well, let's move on from that. Thank you, councillors. To explain our virtual processes, I will be systematically trying to seek consent from various councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions and bylaws that are put before us tonight. I will do this to some degree alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so and move to the next name on the alphabetical list. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through a conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining the speaking order from the source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental without acknowledgement from me. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have a second say beyond their question and supplemental will indicate again and go to the bottom of the speakers list. This, of course, is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors are reminded that if I believe you are not audible, I will call on you. Councillors are further asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I have called upon you for a verbal reaction or input. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, I will call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no for the question on the motion, and then return to mute. Brings us to item 2.2 on our agenda. I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting. It reads as follows: that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. And why don't we start with Deputy Mayor Kellum tonight? Would you consent to move that?
Yes, I would move that motion, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, would you second that?
Yes, I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Seiler, we're not registering your vote at this point. What say you?
Yes, I'll move that. Vote.
Not move it. We need you to say yes or no.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. And so that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require council's recognition and action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 7 items tonight on the consent agenda, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? Please indicate if you do through the WebEx. So no indication there, according to the clerk. So I have a resolution to address the consent agenda and previous minutes as follows. The consent items 3.1 to 3.7 be received for information, and the minutes of the June 8th, 2020 regular council meetings be adopted. Councillor Rothwell, can I call on you to serve as our mover for that?
I so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Seiler, would you serve as our seconder?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any debate or discussion on the consent agenda resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We have included on tonight's agenda two public meetings, one dedicated to a land planning matter and the other to drains. To facilitate the public meeting, we must temporarily adjourn from our regular council meeting. I have before me a motion to make that happen. It reads as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth adjourns at 7:20 p.m. for the purpose of public meetings under the Drainage Act and the Planning Act concerning the following. Item 1, an application for a zoning bylaw amendment by Scott Patterson on behalf of Zeta Group, Inc. And number 2, the Danbrook A and B Municipal Drain Report prepared by Spreet Associates Engineers and Architects. Can I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover for this?
Yes, Mayor Todd, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstead, would you second that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Council, any discussion or debate? Please indicate if so. No indication of same, so let's have that vote. Councillor Rothwell, we're not recording your vote. What say you? Councillor Rothwell, can you hear us? Has Councillor Rothwell lost connection, do we think?
I'm in favor.
Oh, there we are. Thank you. Okay.
Thank
with
you.
That is carried. All right, so that temporarily meeting, and now we turn to two public, earlier noted. First, I'd like to welcome to a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act for a North Perth zoning bylaw. We know that we have some visitors with us on the call joining us tonight. Appreciate your attendance, commitment to sharing with council your opinions about this matter. Statutory public meeting pursuant to the Ontario Planning Act to deal with an application for an amendment to the North Perth zoning bylaw submitted by Scott Patterson of Patterson Planning Consultants, Inc. on behalf of property owner Zeta Group, Inc. as owner of the subject property. Correspondence, reports, and comments received regarding this application will be considered by council in this public meeting. Those in attendance remotely wishing to make comment concerning this application will be given an opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to appeal council's decision must make verbal submission during this public meeting or have made a written submission to the council. Those who want to receive notice of the municipality's decision concerning this application must notify the clerk by email or telephone, giving their mailing address and telephone number. At this time, I'll call for a summary of this application and amendment offered by North Perth planner Sean Yilmaz. Mr. Yilmaz, welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg, members of council, and members of the public. Zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 2-2020 submitted by Patterson Planning Consultants on behalf of the property owner Zeta Group Incorporated requests to amend the zoning of the subject property to permit the proposed development of a semi-detached dwelling on an undersized lot. The applicant has acquired the subject property with the intent of establishing a semi-detached dwelling and to split the property into two individual conveyable parcels through an application for consent submitted concurrently to the County of Perth. The county planner presented the application for consent to North Perth Council on March 16th, 2020, with North Perth Council recommending to County Council to approve the application at the March 30th, 2020 County of Perth Land Division Committee meeting. As a result of the global pandemic and the emergency stay-at-home order, Perth County Land Division Committee was subsequently canceled, and a new public meeting for the consent application is rescheduled for Monday, June 29th. North Perth staff have elected to move forward with the zoning bylaw amendment application ahead of the public meeting for the consent, as there is no perceived conflict or conformity concerns. The application can move forward independently. As such, the subject property is located at part of lots 129 and 130 of Plan 168 and is municipally known as 490 Wellington Avenue South in the Listowel ward. The property is an exterior lot located at the northeast corner of Wellington Avenue South and John Rosa Street East. The property currently contains a neglected, vacant, single-detached dwelling. The vacant house has been noted to be a public safety concern and has been ordered to be sealed and secured. The existing inhabitable dwelling is also somewhat visually unappealing. The zoning bylaw amendment application seeks relief from several provisions of the North Perth zoning bylaw, which will effectively permit the proposed dwelling on a lot that is considered undersized for a semi-detached dwelling. The subject property is within the residential 4 zone, or the R4 zone of the North Perth zoning bylaw, which permits low to medium density residential uses, including the proposed semi-detached dwelling. If approved, the property will remain in the R4 zone, but include special provisions recognizing the deficiencies and will be identified as R4-20 in the North Perth zoning bylaw. The subject property in its current form has 17.6 meters or 58 feet of public road frontage and a lot area of approximately 520 square meters or 5,600 square feet. The applicants are requesting a reduced minimum lot area for one unit of a semi-detached dwelling on an interior lot of 211.1 meters, where 278 square meters is normally required. They are also requesting a reduced minimum lot area for one unit of a semi-detached dwelling on a corner lot of 309.5 square meters, where 325 square meters is normally required. Also, a reduced minimum frontage requirement for an interior lot of 7 meters, where 9 meters is normally required. A reduced minimum distance between a driveway ramp and an intersection of 7.3 meters, where 9.1 meters is normally required, and a reduced site triangle for a corner lot of 7.3 meters, where 9 meters is normally required. The subject property is located within a settlement area as defined within the provincial policy statement, also known as the PPS, and is located within the residential designation of the Listowel Ward official plan. The PPS and the official plan promote efficient development and accommodating an appropriate range and mix of residential uses. Goals include efficient use of infrastructure, minimizing land use conflict, encouraging a wide variety of housing types, providing an attractive environment while preserving the character of the surrounding neighborhood, and promoting additional housing through intensification and redevelopment. The proposed rezoning will preserve the character of the area, as the land use will be consistent with adjacent lots while creating one additional residential lot through intensification. The redevelopment of the property will also replace a dilapidated building that has been a noted hazard, improving the aesthetic nature of the neighborhood, conforming to the policies of the Listowel Ward official plan. As I mentioned, relief has been requested from several provisions of the zoning bylaw. The applicant has provided a planning brief which sufficiently addresses these reduced provisions, which is also summarized within the staff report. For the reasons noted within those reports, staff is supportive of this application. Now, I just need to mention that several comments and concerns were received from residents at the end of last week after preparing the staff report. And we believe it might be prudent for us to wait until next week for a final decision, as this will allow time for any late comments, if any, to be received. Staff is recommending that the Council of Municipality of North Perth approve the application for a zoning bylaw amendment through a first and second reading, with the final reading at the next council meeting, pending any additional correspondence. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Yilmaz. Just rapidly scrolling through some of the concepts here. Okay. Yes, can I invite at this point then the clerk to provide us with notice of public meeting details? Just let me set this up.
Notices inviting persons to the public meeting were mailed on May the 26th, 2020 by first-class mail to landowners within 120 meters of the subject property and emailed to all applicable agencies. The notice was posted on the website and on the subject property on May the 26th, 2020, advising of tonight's public meeting.
Thank you. And can you provide with, for me and for those attending, information about correspondence, comments, and other reports received to this date?
So I've been in receipt of 2 pieces of correspondence. And as per the direction that we provided for anyone wanting to join our public meetings remotely, anyone sending it in by writing has been, it's been noted that we would read that aloud into the minutes. So I'm going to start with the first one, and that is from Elizabeth and William Golden. My name is Elizabeth Golden. My husband William and I reside at 460 Wellington Avenue South. My concerns of the proposed building and zoning are as follows. I understand that the subject builder would like to construct a semi-detached building on said lot. As a taxpayer and a resident of this neighborhood, I would like to see less congestion. There are already multiple quads in the area, and the parking is notorious on the streets already. By building a semi-detached unit on this property, it will require ample parking on the neighborhood streets. Also, as there is the fact that the fire department is in the area, and if there is an emergency, it would be very difficult to access. A single dwelling unit would be more in line with the existing neighborhood. The permit to reduce footage, in my opinion, is stating the lot isn't big enough to sustain the 2 units. There's also the removal of some beautiful trees. The neighbor that has been a resident in her home for 33 years next to the said property will suffer some destruction of her garden and fence. This is unfair. We moved to this neighborhood to enjoy less density. Please accept this email as my participation in this meeting and consider my comments. Thank you again, Elizabeth and William Golden. The second piece of correspondence has been received by Vicky and Todd Dietrich. Council, you did receive this at the latter part of last week in an email, but for those listening in, I will read this as well. Good afternoon. We have received notice that there is to be a remote public meeting at 7 on Monday, June 15th, 2020, regarding the amendments to part lots 129 and 130 of Plan 168, which is 490 Wellington Avenue South. This lot corners onto the intersection of Wellington Avenue South and John Rosa Street East. As longtime residents of John Rosa Street East, our family has lived on John Rosa Street East for almost 17 years. 17 years ago, when we started looking to make a home and raise a family in Listowel and the surrounding area, we looked at newly built homes in the Wallace subdivision, as well as other homes in the area. When looking at homes in the subdivision, we came to the conclusion we wanted a home in a quieter part of town with a larger lot. What drew us to this part of Listowel was the fact that our home was in a well-developed neighborhood with mature trees and single-family homes. John Rosa Street East was a quiet street with lots of room for our family to grow. Our family home had almost a country feel while living in the town. At times we would see a deer on our street out in front of our house. In the most recent years, we have seen development on all sides of us. Some of the development has been singled with family dwellings. However, most of the development has been multi-family dwellings. The population of this once quiet neighborhood has more than quadrupled since the time we bought our house here. Long gone are the days of our quiet nature neck of the woods. Now we will go for a walk down the street and I can smell cannabis coming from the buildings that house the 4 apartment complexes that line Wellington Avenue South, and often think that this is not the kind of community I wanted to raise my family in. Because of the recent growth in our small community in the John Rosa Street East, Wellington Avenue South, and Davidson Avenue South area of Listowel, we feel we are to capacity in this neighborhood. The increase in multifamily dwellings has increased the vehicle traffic as well as foot traffic in our neighborhood. The corner lot, 490 Wellington Avenue South, has always been, as long as we have lived there, a single family dwelling and should remain the same. This town should not be making more concessions to allow people or companies to build complexes that will house more people on top of more people. We are opposed to these amendments and feel the amendments listed below should not be granted to build a complex or any other residence to entice more than one family to dwell on this property. And there's an excerpt of the actual proposed zoning bylaw amendment in this letter that everyone has noted. Thank you for letting us voice our concerns and taking them into consideration regarding the proposed amendments to part lots 129 and 130 of Plan 168, which is 490 Wellington Avenue South. And please note that we have copied participants who will be speaking at the meeting on Monday and have given them permission to reference this email if they like during the speaking time during the meeting. Again, signed by Todd and Vicky Dietrich. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Berfelds. At this time, then, we'll turn to input from those who are in attendance. I'd call at this time if there are any who are in support of the application other than the applicant, you may at this time speak. Clerk Berfelds, are we aware of anyone in that condition? Okay, so I'm being told that no one has arranged to join us on the support of the application front. At this time, we'll call on those who are in opposition to the application to speak. I believe we have 3 speakers designated, and I'll call them in the order that they've been prepared for me by the clerk. So first, if I can call on Justin Luby. Justin, if you can just tell us where you live in the community, and then you're free to have your say at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Everyone can hear me okay? Pat, hear me? Yeah. So I am 290 John Rosa Street East. 227 John Rosa Street. Sorry, a little nervous here. My issues with the amendment mostly is the zoning. The zoning, when it took place last year from Stratford, seems to be inaccurate with what was once said. My other issue is the traffic. Traffic right now on Wellington is very bad. Cars on both sides of the roads would not allow a fire truck, let alone anything, to get through this street. Yes, I agree with the house does need to become demolished. It is a hazard. I agree with this. Sorry. I guess that's about all I have a concern with. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. You don't need to apologize when sharing with us your impressions and your thoughts. So just thank you for joining us. Next up, I have Kurt McLaughlin. Kurt, are you with us?
Yes, I'm right here. Thank you for having me. I'm a neighbor on the same block as all those that have spoken. My address is 290 Union Street, so I'm kitty corner to the property in question. I'm more here to support the neighbors that have spoken, and I echo their comments completely, especially the one seeing the neighboring property losing some trees and some fencing that is well growing, and just makes the overall block look much better. So I'm here to support those on my block, and I echo the comments that have been said, especially in the 2 emails. I echo those completely. So thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Glad you could join us. And the last name I have on my list, and the clerk may poll to see if there are any others, is Brenda Potter. Brenda, welcome.
I'm not very good at speaking, but I just wanted to give my opinion. I'm one of the residents that's been here probably the longest. I've been here 34 years in my house, and it's right next door to the lot that's that they want to demolish, and that's a really good idea because we've been looking at that house for a number of years, and it's been a eyesore. And the filth and the stink that's coming from that place is not even fit for animals, alone human beings, to be taking in. I'm very discouraged and disappointed in our town that they would allow such dirt and filth to be next door to people that are raising families, that they have to breathe that in every day. I have always been a good neighbor, and I've always had excellent neighbors. Even when Mr. Gordon lived in that house, he took pride in it. And of course, over the years, other people have looked after it and let it go. And but I've always cleaned up around there. Until the last couple of years, I couldn't do it anymore because I got sick. Well, I'm very hurt that this house has come to this point. That, and I really believe that it's the town's doing in allowing it to go so far. I said, I don't like to be critical or judgmental, but I think it's time that you open your eyes and seen, if you had to live next door to that, what would you get from that? Like, I don't think you would be able to live there even for a day, alone someone living there for years. So anyway, I just have a concern that about the roads too. It's very busy. The traffic here is very bad. People, there's no speeding signs. Like, the people go up and down this road like it's the 400 or something, and it's pretty sad. And the character of that house and the neighborhood, like, you know, it's demolishing our neighborhood, for goodness sakes, to look at that place. Like, anyway, I think I've said enough. And my fence and my yard, I said, like, I don't know, they say that some of the property that's mine is on his lot or whatever. I would like to look into that and see what's going on. I have 3 beautiful trees that we take pride in, and it's our shade. And he wants to remove those and my fence, and my husband put those there, and he's been gone now for a year. And right after he died, and I get this notice that I'm on somebody else's property. Well, I would like to get this all settled and once and for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. Brenda, just for my information, what is your street address?
476
Okay.
Wellington.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any others who wish to speak in opposition to this application? We don't know of any. So at this time, this is the opportunity for the applicant or the applicant's agent to speak. I believe Scott Patterson is with us. So Scott, if you wish to speak to this, you're welcome to.
Good evening, Mayor Todd, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Yeah, these concerns were just brought to my attention. This is the first I'm hearing of them as well. But naturally, I'm in support of the application, and I believe I provided justification and comments in the planning brief that was provided with the application to support what I see as modest reductions to the lot to support this semi-detached dwelling occurring. In my planning report, there was a summary of all the other zoning requirements that would be applicable to this lot if it was developed, speaking to lot coverage, landscaped open space, and all of the other setbacks that are applicable. And all of those other zoning requirements are being met or exceeded. And in some instances, they're being exceeded by quite a lot with the amount of landscaped open space and things. 2 of the zoning requirements that we're deviating are the daylight visibility triangle at the corner and the distance from a driveway to the corner. The minimum lot width for a semi-detached dwelling is 10.5 meters on a corner lot. And the setback requirements in the bylaw require the driveway to be back 9 meters. So I think I alluded to that in my planning report, but there seems to be a conflict in the zoning bylaw where those 2 things just don't allow each other to happen. So that was one of the reasons why there's 2 things being requested with regard to that reduction in the driveway setback and the visibility triangle. So taking those out of context and just looking at the other three variances, and then looking at all the other setback requirements and things like that, in my opinion, it appeared that these developments or these houses could actually be constructed on the lot in conformity to the bulk of the zoning, with some minor modifications to the actual lot areas. I would note that these are two-story dwellings. They're roughly 1,350 square feet of livable space in each above grade. They have two parking spaces, being one in the garage, one in the driveway. And again, there's no other setback deviations that I'm aware of through this proposal. We did submit a copy of the survey with the application naturally. And yes, it does appear that the neighbor's fence does encroach onto this property. That is shown on the survey, and staff are aware of that. If that goes any further, that really is a civil matter between the two property owners to discuss. But the intent would be naturally that this property owner can utilize their entire property for the purposes of redevelopment. So if there's any questions from staff or from council, sorry, I'd be happy to try and answer those. But right now, naturally, I'm just here in full support of the application and hopefully moving it forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, councillors, if you have interest in asking questions, please manifest that through the chat function to the clerk. Let's check our checklist, Clerk Fairfelds. Who is up first? Councillor Richardson, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I just wondering, I understand that it's a civil matter and two different matters, but I certainly would like to get and any other comments that come in, because I certainly can understand the trepidation by the neighbor by having all of a sudden the fence being on the opposing property. I certainly understand as that being troublesome. And that's kind of a different matter than the application that is in front of us this evening. So I would think that it may be not so bad of an idea to wait until we get further comments in, and possibly in that time frame to get some further investigation to look into that. Two different matters, I understand that, but when we're talking about the same parcel of land, that maybe that's a good idea to do so. So yeah, I think we need to get that, and if there's any mitigation that can possibly happen between the neighbors, and like as far as felling trees and natural landscaping to do that, I understand it's not part of this, but I think it would bode a discussion and have that with the neighbor. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Rosa.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. And through you, further to Councillor Richardson comments, I believe there was a comment by one of the neighbors regarding trees. I know Scott Patterson did raise the issue of the fence of the neighbor, which is apparently by the survey on the subject property. Where are the trees located that three trees that were talked about to be removed? Are they on the subject property or on the neighboring property?
Mr. Patterson, you want to take a crack at that?
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Again, the survey plan shows, to the best of my knowledge, 4 trees on the subject property, one of which being on the John Rosa Street frontage, and then 3 trees on the back of the property, which will be in the rear yard of the new units. 3 of the trees are contained within the fence line of the abutting property owner, the lands that they believe they own, which are now on these lands, and 1 tree which is in the backyard area of the Wellington Street property proposed for redevelopment. So based on the survey plan, it would appear the fence itself would need to be relocated, and there is the potential for 3 trees that are on private property subject to this development that the neighbor may have believed were on their lands as well. So whether there's a potential to save those trees as part of the redevelopment, I can't speak to that. They are in the rear yard area, so there is that potential to look at that. And the tree naturally along John Rosa Street is well removed from the development footprint for the new home as well. So there is the potential to save that as well.
Okay, thank you. Any supplemental, Councillor Rothwell? Councillor Rothwell, anything further?
Oh, I'm having a problem here. Just can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm having a problem with my microphone. There we are. Sorry about that. My microphone's having a problem. Anyways, thank you, Mayor Todd, and through you to Scott. Thanks for your response. The survey plan that is in our agenda package doesn't show the detail that you're providing. So obviously, there's some additional information. That's the reason why I had my questions. Is that the survey plan that I'm seeing in both your report as well as in the attached consent application doesn't show the trees and the fence that, or at least that I see, show the trees and the fence. So I appreciate the information, but I do concur with Councillor Richardson that perhaps a pause would be appropriate to allow some additional conversation between the applicant and the neighbors and the municipality regarding some of these matters would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, anyone else wishing to speak or ask questions from council at this point? I visited the site today, and I guess my concern, and I'm not sure if I fully understand what's proposed at this point, is how far forward this new building will be towards the corner of Wellington and John Rosa Street. Because that corner could be created, or it could create quite a blind circumstance for traffic that would turn from John Rosa on to Wellington. And I found myself a little bit concerned about that. So, Mr. Patterson, do you have any comments about how that height might impact and how close to the front of the corner, if you will, of that intersection will be?
To you, Mayor Kasenberg, the building itself is proposed to be set back 6 meters from Wellington Avenue South and 5 meters from John Rosa Street from the property line. Naturally, outside of the property line is the boulevard before you reach the actual municipal curb and municipal roadway. So 5 meters again from John Rosa Street and 6 meters back from Wellington Avenue South. And again, in the context of this plan, there would be a 7.3 meter corner visibility triangle provided on the property. And for context, when I talked about this with staff, a lot of the work that I do is in Kitchener, and the biggest corner visibility triangle that they request in the city of Kitchener is typically 7.5 meters, which is 25 feet. And we're looking at 7.3 in this location. And sometimes even abutting regional roads in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, they reduce them down to 3 meters by 3 meters. So this daylight triangle, again, in my opinion, would seem quite large, considering these are two local roads. When in other municipalities, they have daylight triangles that are smaller than this for regional and city roads. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. With regards to the level of frontage of the building, where does it sit with regards to the building immediately north of it on the next adjacent lot, which I believe is 476, the neighbor who's visiting with us tonight?
Again, through to you, Mr. Mayor, based on the survey plan in front of me, which I would be happy to provide to council and staff, it appears the neighboring property to the north is set back 5.5 meters to the front corner of their building. And again, our building is proposed to be set back 6.1 meters.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood these plans. I can't say I deal with these routinely before becoming mayor, so sometimes they lend a little bit of confusion to me. All right, any further questions from councillors? Any comments at this point? No, okay. So notice of the decision related to this matter will be given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The council's decision is subject to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. And that brings this public meeting to a close. Next up, we have a planning meeting for the, public meeting for the purpose of a consideration of the report on the Danbrook Branch A and B municipal drains. Welcome to any assessed landowners who are visiting with us on this call. We're glad you joined us. And at this point in time, I will call on Brandon Widener, who is an engineer with Spree Associates Limited, to present the report on this Danbrook Branch A and B municipal trains. Mr. Widener.
Good evening, everybody. So tonight we have the Danbrook Drain A and B. This started off with just a Danbrook B drain, and it later turned into both. There is a number of branches associated with it as well, and it's quite a large drain in length, but the number of property owners is fairly small, so we only have 5 owners on this drain. I will quickly run through with what is proposed. We have a Danbrook A drain, which is the drain to the west. That drain is an enclosure of an open channel, starting at the existing ditch back by the woods in Jancora Farms. This is lot 22. A new tile will then be constructed, following the old ditch up to the Deaconbosch property. That tile will then be reconstructed easterly across Jancora Farms into G&T Reynolds. There's also a small branch A drain being constructed to pick up some land due to filling in the ditch in the Deaconbosch property. The B drain is the other drain we are dealing with tonight. They did all in one report. This drain starts back at the forest in Jancora Farms on the southerly limit. There's an open ditch that runs across into Gary Reynolds for a length of approximately 510 meters. There's then a new tile proposed to reconstruct the existing one. Heading straight north through the Reynolds property, that's a 21-inch tile. That tile will then turn due east across Jancora Farms and continue all the way across Jancora Farms into Birchlawn. There is 3 branches on the B drain. First branch, being branch A, is going to start in the Jancora Farm property in lot 24 and go across Perth line 22 into Birchlawn. The next one is a branch for Jancora through Gary Reynolds. That is branch B. That's in the center of the Reynolds farm. There's another branch C in the back of the Reynolds farm, again for Jancora. Now, these branches are for outlets for him. He has had his farm surveyed to systematically tile it, and that is where his tiler suggested the need for outlets, and we agreed with them. And that basically makes all his outlets municipal. The total cost of the work is $328,500. That is split among the 5 landowners and the per line 22. There is a portion being the open ditch enclosure, which is non-grantable. That is why that is shown separately on the net page. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions from assessed landowners who've joined us? Clerk, their thoughts, comments? Sorry, let me just set this up for you. Okay, Scott, would you like to join us and offer your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council about this matter? Carfeld, do you see anyone indicating a desire to speak? Okay, so we're not seeing any indication from council with regards to request for speak. So I assume that given that we're not hearing any significant concerns and we haven't heard of a withdrawal from correspondence or phone before this meeting, I believe we can adjourn this meeting at this point, and council will consider a provisional bylaw giving first and second reading and set the court of revision date to follow. All right, that brings us to the end of 2 public meetings then. So I have a resolution for council's consideration that will bring us back into our regular council meeting. That reads as follows: that the public meetings under the Drainage Act and the Planning Act are now adjourned at 7:59 p.m. and the council reconvene into regular open council. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be our mover for that?
Yes, I will move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, would you second that? Councillor Behrens?
Yes, I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate from those attending? I assume generally no. So let's have that vote. Councillor Behrens, we're not tracking your vote. What say you?
I am in favor.
Thank you. So that is carried. That brings us back into our regular meeting. That brings us to agenda item number, I guess we have some business to do here. So we're not done yet. Let's do some business around these meetings. First up, Council, with regards to what lies before me, I have a resolution and a bylaw relating to the zoning bylaw amendment that has been requested. Did Council wish to defer action on this until next week, next meeting, for the purposes of giving the process due time for consideration and last comments? Anyone vigorously object to that approach? Okay. Anyone vigorously opposed to letting this sit until next week when we can finalize our actions on this? See anything, Council? Okay, so we'll put that aside for now. And our intention is that Council will see that matter again next week for consideration of a first, second, and third reading at that time. That brings us to the drainage reports here. And we have two resolutions and a bylaw to consider, Council. The first is that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth will accept the Danbrook Branch A and B Municipal Drain Report dated March 2020, prepared by Spreet Associates, Engineers, and Architects. Can I call on Councillor Duncan as our mover for that one?
I will move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you. Our two local council drain experts there. That's good. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that's carried. Next, it pertains to the Court of Revision for this matter that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth will hold the Court of Revision for the Danbrook Branch A and B Municipal Drain on Monday, July 6th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m., presumably by digital technology means. We'll call on Deputy Mayor Callum. Will you serve as the mover for that one?
Yes, I'll move that motion, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, would you second that?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried unanimously. And now let's turn to the bylaw. Bylaw 84-2020, being a bylaw to provide for a drainage works, Danbrook A and B municipal drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a first and second time, and be provisionally adopted, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to serve as our mover for that one?
Also move.
Thank you. And Councillor Seiler is our seconder.
I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on the bylaw? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that too is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Now that brings us to agenda item number 5, which are reports from departments and key staff. Let's begin with item 5.1, the CAO's office. Yes, for those guests who joined us for all of those proceedings, you're welcome to depart at this time with no hard feelings. Item 5.1.1 introduces counsel to the plan proposed by staff related to reopening of various municipal facilities and the approach to receiving guests therein. As well, Mr. Snell will tackle a proposition for fee relief related to patios encroaching on municipal property for 2020. I'll call on North Perth CAO Chris Snell to address this report. CAO Snell, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wait for Pat, and I think we'll begin with the slide deck and then circle back to the report. So since the provincial emergency on March 17th, we've been working to create a 3-phase recovery plan for our operations that closely align with the province, and safety has been our paramount first issue in these discussions. We've been able to adapt to the changing demands, providing services with little disruption during the pandemic. It is now our intent for municipal recovery is to plan for the carrying on of full municipal operations as the pandemic eases. So as everyone's familiar with the 3 phases that the province have put out, and currently right now we are in sort of stage 2 of the recovery phase. The next slide really is the provincial restart or the reopening that was announced on April 27th. And as I said, our area of North Perth is in stage 2. Some of the province, as everyone knows, is still in stage 1, but further municipalities, I understand, are entering into stage 2 as of the end of this week. So as we all know, the push to, from phases was based on managing the pandemic, and as we know, flattening the curve to make sure that we have the healthcare capacity to deal with the pandemic. There's been no timelines associated with how the province recovers and their movement through the phases. And similarly, our action plan is also very flexible and adaptable as we resume all our operations. And we will be not setting any firm target dates just because of the necessary need for this plan to be pliable. As everyone knows, we entered stage 2 on July 12th. So in considerations of this plan, and some of this has even changed as the mayor talked about since this slide deck was put together, but the lifting of the ban of people to 10 is still in place, but as the mayor said, we now are permitting each to enlarge our bubble. This plan needs to be coordinated with other municipal services, shared services like the library for a great example. We would love this to be coordinated with other lower tier municipalities in our area. Our risk management and tolerance is a factor. We certainly need to ensure that we have adequate staffing resources, and safety is paramount. One of the things that we're certainly recognizing is the amount of cleaning that's required as we open, and we do have a limited amount of staff to perform that cleaning. So we focus on how we do business, how to bring employees back into the physical workplace safety, and how do the public use our facilities and interact with employees once we're open. So cleaning standards and procedures have been developed and are in place. We're looking at staggered work hours and hours of operation where necessary. Physical work locations and distance requirements. We did not have 2 meters between all our workstations or barriers, and that has been addressed or being addressed as we speak. How are our meeting rooms used? When will the normal return to having a meeting in the community room, for example, with more than a handful of people? Our customer service counters and the necessary IT requirements. So like the province, we based it on our 3-stage strategy. Step 1 has been where we really are at, or coming out of, but most facilities and operations and public areas were closed. Step 2 was the phase we're entering with a gradual reopening of facilities and public areas. And then step 3 will be the complete opening of all facilities and operations. So again, up until more or less June 11th, areas that were open were our parks for walkthrough purposes. They've been open through the entire pandemic, but recently we've reopened our sports fields, skateboard park, tennis and pickle and basketball courts. But as of yet, there's still no team play permitted. Teams are permitted to practice, but no team play. Municipal areas that remain closed is playground equipment, splash pads, the pools, washroom facilities, although I do have some good news on that. Recreation staff is working very hard to have some public washroom facilities open throughout the municipality. Our arenas and community halls, as well as the municipal office. Libraries began offering curbside service on June the 8th. The branches do remain closed to the public, but I know the staff is working very hard to open up as permitted by the province from the June 12th announcements. The emergency childcare is operational, but as the mayor says, we're transitioning from emergency childcare to hopefully more normal childcare center, but there's still a lot of questions to be answered by the province as we work towards that goal. Our meetings will remain virtual for the vast majority, and active screening is in place for childcare center and contractors performing essential work within our facilities. Stage 2, which could include opening our playgrounds as permitted, some of our kinder camps or alternate childcare or child-centered programming. As the mayor has decided or has mentioned, schools, splash pads and day camps will not open for 2020 as of June 9th. Now, as the mayor said, the splash pad may be looked at later on in the summer. Our community centers and arenas remain closed. The library is working towards operating as per the provincial order. And at this stage, we will open some municipal facilities with appropriate safety protocols being met. Screening will be done as per advice from both the province and the public health. Plans will be approved by the emergency control group and or council. We will limit our elevator capacity to 1 person or family unit. Employees are to maintain the 2-meter separation within workspaces or barriers. Protective barriers will be placed at our service counters, and floor markings indicating directional traffic and 2-meter spacing will be outlined on the floor in high area and customer service areas. Effective June the 22nd, the municipal office will be open by appointment only. Appointments will be centrally booked with the appropriate space between for customers who have essential needs to visit the office. Services all appointments will not be booked because all our services we still feel are being met through alternate means by online payments, virtual meetings, use of the Dropbox, etc. During this step, protective barriers at the municipal office will be temporary until the permanent barriers can be sourced and completed. Facilities that are open to the public will require cleaning twice a day to the high touch point areas. Staff will be permitted to return to the workplace, but provided the flexibility to continue working from home if they can or choose to. And again, meetings will remain virtual. One of the things that I would just like to talk about at this point is we do have an upcoming tax date. So certainly, in case any member of the public reaches out to staff, we do have alternate payment options. The Dropbox, as I mentioned, internet banking, as well as payments can be made through the bank and the e-transfer. But we certainly understand that some customers do like to come to the municipal office and make a cash payment, but we're pleased asking them that if they could use the alternate options, that would be the best at this time. And then step 3 which will coincide with the provincial announcement to move into their final stage, but will be the reopening of the rest of our facilities and park amenities. As I said before, no date has been determined for this. And we will increase the safety processes in place at our municipal office, for example. We will have a full counter service barrier in place by the time step 3 hits. And then we will, meetings may remain virtual or hybrid or of an in-person and virtual. I think one of the things we've learned as staff through this is we can certainly do more using virtual meetings with less travel required by staff in certain circumstances. So I think there's some lessons to be learned from the pandemic. As I said before, the plan is not defined or prescriptive, and it will have to be pliable as the situation unfolds, and certainly we'll be looking for references from public health. The staff working group has been made up of frontline staff, and they've been working with the emergency control group to monitor the situation and make adjustments. And both council and the public will be kept up to date as we recover and our recovery plan is enacted. All this information is available on our website, at northperth.ca/COVID-19. And again, as council is aware, the more community parts of the recovery are underway with the COVID recovery action groups, with the 3 subgroups being community services, economy, and agriculture. And we will be continuing to monitor and adapt to changing provincial and federal government announcements and relief programs. And will we use technology moving forward to make sure municipal business and customer service is first and foremost to our residents. So I can pause here and take any questions, or I can go into the report.
Sure. Why don't we stop at this point and sort of halfway into the CAO's report and ask if there are any questions about his report about the recovery and reopening operations. The clerk has indicated that Councillor Andreessen wishes to speak or ask a question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Todd. And through you, I just have a question for CAO Snell. Just wondering about any considerations around the return of council to the chambers. Would that happen typically in stage 3 or beyond that? And the second question I would have around that is, do you anticipate changes to the council chambers upon us returning? Indeed, around other barriers or spacing out of councillors in the chambers if and when we return? Thank you.
CAO Snell.
Thank you. The clerk and I actually had this discussion earlier today, and we have no timeline yet on council returning fully to the council chambers. And again, you're correct. We'll have to look at spacing in the council chambers when we do return. As you recall, prior to us having virtual committee meetings, we did space everybody out 2 meters, but that did basically bump staff back into the gallery section of the council chambers and really did not facilitate a wholesome discussion that we've been used to between staff and council. So we will have to look at how the council chambers is established, especially if the 2-meter requirement stays in place, which I suspect it will. But we will probably be looking at that later on in stage 2 or the beginning of stage 3.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, CAO Snell, did you wish to continue?
Certainly, and I don't think I'll repeat myself with the vast majority of the written report, but certainly can answer any questions that council may have, but I will concentrate on the restaurants and patio section. So as part of the provincial announcement moving into stage 2 of the recovery plan, they have permitted restaurants to open patio sections. One of the things we don't have a lot of is restaurants with patios in our municipality. So we do have a bylaw 107 2013 that was enacted with regard to basically patios encroaching on our municipal owned land. This bylaw also covers displaying merchandise as well. And in the past, we've had I believe only one restaurant take advantage of this, but certainly have had downtown store users use it for displaying of restaurants. Normally, the first application fee is $200 and a $40 renewal fee. So one of the things I'm just asking council to consider in light of the announcements and the potential for people coming forward for patios to be encroaching on our areas, that we would still require them to sign up for the permit and go through all the necessary issues around accessibility and health and safety and insurance requirements, but we would waive the $200 initial fee or a $40 renewal fee. And certainly Clerk Berfelds could help me with this, but we haven't had any requests so far this year for new applications. And we will have a couple renewals that have happened in previous years that we know about. And just one addition to that, and this is, as like everything else, this is changing rapidly. We have had some ongoing conversations with a local restaurant that can open up a patio on some newly acquired property, but they have requested that we loan them or rent them up to 12 picnic tables. We can accommodate the request. Now, we usually have a fee of $13 for an event. And speaking with recreation staff and interim manager Amy, that $13 for an event usually lasts between 1 to 5 days. Obviously, with the pandemic lasting much more of that in a matter of weeks, we feel like we don't want to be charging $13 for every week, but we would also like council to consider either waiving that fee again or actually just charging them the $13 once for the entire rental. That would be the staff's recommendation. The mayor has an amended recommendation for staff's for council's consideration with the rental fee portion blank for council to decide. We are also, as a result of some of the discussions we're having with the emergency control group and staff, placing picnic tables in areas in the downtown core that people can use for takeout food services, including tables at one more table at Livingston Park. There's already one located there. Tables at the Rotary Park at the library, which could be used both for food purposes as well as accessing the Wi-Fi at the library, and as well as a location at the Warden Upgrove parking lot area in the public parking lot, and sort of in the front section, which was sort of the location where the parkette was to be one day created. So that would give some options for people to use and create some eating amenities in our downtown that will hopefully help with our takeout services. Certainly, I can answer any questions that council may have.
Thanks, Chris. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Seiler, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Yes, Chris, I just have a question. I was watching one of the question periods with the Premier on Doug Ford, and the question was raised how the restaurant reopening would happen. And he made a comment that it was going to be leaving it up to the municipalities under Bill 22. Have you read Bill 22 yet, or do you understand this?
That is news to me, Councillor Seiler, but I will investigate that tomorrow for sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Behrens.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we are.
Sorry, I'm having the same technical issues as Councillor Rothwell. My only comment would be in the resolution where it says that we are going to waive the fees, that we specifically put in during the COVID pandemic, just so that, you know, in future years, yes, we waive them, but for a specific purpose. That is my only comment.
Thank you. I think that's a useful amendment. Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. My question through you to CAO Snell is how much revenue did the municipality receive for license fees? I know that we haven't got many licensed patios or patios, you said, but what sort of ballpark are we in for waiving fees?
Probably Clerk Burfeld's could assist me with this answer because it does fall under her budget, but I suspect it's less than $200 per year.
Pat's nodding yes in the chamber. So yes, that's correct. Less than $200 a year.
Good. Thank you. And just another question specifically based on the report from CO Snell. Does the municipality have an ample supply of picnic tables that we could rent these out to not just this business but others when in fact we have need for picnic tables in our parks and so on? Thank you.
So we certainly have had this discussion a lot with the recreation staff, and although placing up to 17 additional picnic tables downtown will limit our supply in certain areas, but we don't feel that there's going to be a large need for large family reunions at our pavilions in the near term. So we can look at sort of taking a few picnic tables from many areas, gathering them up and locating them in the downtown. Now, if we have a lot of requests at some point, we're going to have to limit these requests, and that's sort of the challenge we had. We certainly don't see a lot of requests coming forward additionally in downtown Livable, but that doesn't mean we won't see them from somewhere else potentially. So we sort of have been acting on a first come first served basis so far, and this is the request that we've had. And the economic Craig committee did discuss this issue, and some of the restaurant representation on that committee didn't feel that they would be pursuing any outdoor patios at this time.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, so we have a resolution that has multiple parts here. The second clause, Councillor Behrens has suggested a modification to which I've drafted in my own pen here. So we'll play with that one. And I think the big question is, right now the third clause reads that council rents 12 picnic tables to Krabby Joe's. So it's very specific. I think per Councillor Rothwell's questioning, there was sort of a suggestion that we may want to just indicate that the council would or the corporation would rent available picnic tables at the discretion of the director or the manager of interim manager of recreation to commercial parties on a first come first served basis. Perhaps that's where we want to go, so that we don't tie ourselves just to one place, and we allow for the possibility of others who might want to get in on this action. Councillors, any strong comments on that? Councillor Richardson?
Through you, Mayor Todd, I think that's a good addition to that motion, just for the reason that we've also got the opportunity to make sure that we say that if it's a first come first served basis, that we might only have so many. So if people would like to take advantage of this and get a foothold in there, that they have the opportunity to do so, but it's not of endless supply. So I think that's written in there. Possibly, I don't know if it's getting moot in the point, but the wording of that last part, like instead of just actually say waiving the rental fee during the COVID period, as Councillor Behrens had made mention. So instead of renting it for a rate of, and also waiving the usual rental fee during the COVID period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think I caught in that comment from you, Councillor Richardson, that you would be comfortable waiving the picnic table rental fees completely on that as a part of this resolution. Is that, did I capture that, or did I misrepresent?
No, I did make mention of that. So, but we should specify that it's during the COVID period at all, or the depending, yeah, during the COVID period, and the obvious slow reopening.
Okay. Okay, let me just catch up here. I'll be with you in a minute. Okay. All right, Council, let me try this one, all right? Here's the draft resolution. My best guess at this point, we can play with it a little bit. But the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the report entitled Municipality of North Perth Reopening, dated June 15th, 2020, and the North Perth Recovery Presentation for Information. And the Council approved that the license fees for patios encroaching municipal property, as outlined in Bylaw 107/2013, be waived during the COVID pandemic period in 2020. Checking my words here. And that council provide direction to staff to make available on a first come, first serve basis, picnic tables from its inventory without charge during the COVID pandemic period in 2020. I think I got that right. Okay. Anyone see any improvements on that one? Any suggestions coming in to wishes to comment? Okay. So I don't know if Deputy Clerk Beer is going to get all that, but we understand the general gist, right? So the intention of this resolution is to approve the reports and waive fees during the COVID pandemic period in 2020 for both encroaching on municipal property and for rental of picnic tables, which are available from our inventory on a first come, first served basis. Everyone sort of with me? Anyone not with me? Yell at the clerk through the chat button. Okay, that's good. Councillor Andreessen, can I call on you to serve as our mover for that?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstead, will you second that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Else, anything? Okay, let's have that vote. And we're missing one vote. Councillor Behrens. What say you?
Yes, I am in favor.
Okay, favor. So that's carried. Thank you. For item 5.1.2, Council is provided with an update on the work of an ad hoc committee of council related to our annual celebration of volunteers and staff, which last year was called Celebrate North Perth. I believe North Perth CAO Chris Snell will address this matter. Chris.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. And I certainly want to thank you for your support in the previous report. It's been challenging as we proceed with the rapidity of provincial announcements to mend everything together and both support our staff and our reopening, as well as provide impeccable customer service as well as supporting our business sector. It's been a challenging couple weeks, but we are proceeding and working well together to make it as smooth as possible. On June 9th, the working committee met to discuss the Celebrate North Perth event. It was decided at that meeting that we would postpone our 2020 gathering, physical event, just due to the unknown that if we'll be allowed to hold an event that would have this number of people in attendance. And we suspect it will still be unlikely even by fall. So we're looking at possibly holding a virtual event. All the awards will be advertised as normal, with some enhanced advertising taking place. And we will look to have those deadlines and positions awarded as per the normal schedule. And then we would hold an event, a physical event, hopefully in April of 2021, during National Volunteer Week, that would celebrate both the 2020 awards as well as the 2021 awards. And then we would look at holding this event annually during National Volunteer Week, because I think it makes a nice synergy with that week. So really, that's the update as of today, and certainly as a question brought forward by Councillor Andreessen, we have provided sort of our 2019 North Perth recap, and looked at the pros and cons that we felt coming out of the last event, and we will be working hard as a committee to address these going forward. And certainly I'm prepared to answer any questions that councillors may have.
Thanks, Mr. Snell. Councillors, any questions or comments at this point in time? Clerk Feltz, anything? Okay. Councillor Andreessen?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Andreessen, we have you muted and showing some technical difficulty.
Hi, I think I'm back now. Thank you, Mayor Todd, and through you to CEO Snell. Thank you for this report. I was looking forward to getting an update about what the thoughts were of the committee. And I did review it and appreciate all the information so far. One of the things in the report I'm just wondering about is just appreciation for staff. And I know that there's a lot more to think about, but I just want to, perhaps continue to, just challenge ourselves about what we can do. And I like the idea of the slideshow that was also presented in the report when I read it. And perhaps it would be kind of cool during a celebration like that, once we get back together, is to highlight the great work that departments do during those slideshows and celebrate them during those, like during a gathering that we could have at some point, and featuring, what is it that we do and how can we celebrate the work that we do. Just a thought in terms of moving forward with that. So if you could share that with the committee, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Andreessen. Perhaps we can call on CAO Snell to say a little bit about current staff recognition platform, sort of what we do now, and just so that all of us are aware.
Thank you, Mayor. So we do have a staff recognition program in place that does recognize 5-year milestones for staff, and that at one time was done at Appreciation Night, but unfortunately, much like even our volunteer participation, the attendance at Appreciation Night has been dwindling, as some members of council will attest to that have been around since it began. So we actually started doing those award presentations in the workplace in front of their colleagues, and I think that's been very successful. I believe staff appreciate the recognition of their peers. We also do a staff breakfast that sort of replaced our Christmas lunch that all staff are invited to, and we do that after Christmas now. just because it's less busy. And the staff certainly appreciate it happening in sort of late January, early February, sort of weather depending, as well as the staff do run their own social committee, and it's been very successful over the years, and it's ebbed and flowed, but certainly I would say we're on the upswing of having attendance at those functions. And the HR committee has looked at ways they can maybe enhance the support for the social committee. So I agree with Councillor Andreessen. How we appreciate staff is changing. How staff want to be appreciated is also changing as we work through the new demographics entering the workforce. Unfortunately, a lot of our younger staff were not attending appreciation night, and so we do need to look at ways that they would like to be appreciated that may be different than how maybe I wanted to be appreciated in the past. So we are looking for new and inventive ways to bring that forward, and we will hopefully have some suggestions for council in I would say late summer, early fall.
Thanks, Chris. Any further questions or comments about this one? So I have a resolution for our consideration that the municipality of North Perth receive the Celebrate North Perth report dated June 15th, 2020 for information. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to serve as our mover for that one?
So moved.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, would you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 5.2 in the agenda. Council has asked for item 5.2.1 to recommend a one-year extension to the draft plan approval for the so-called Terrier subdivision located in Listowel, granting a lapse date of June 15th, 2021. I'll ask North Perth planner Sean Yilmaz to introduce. No, not Sean? Is Sally with us? Oh, okay, wonderful. Oh, sorry about that, Sally. I got a lot of things wrong there. We'll invite County Manager of Planning, Sally McMullen, to talk us through this one. Welcome, Sally.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little muffled, so I'd be cautious. Go ahead.
Okay, is that a little better? I'll try to speak loud and clear.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a pretty straightforward application looking at this tonight. This subdivision was approved in 2010, and it was given a 5-year draft approval, but they did need an extension in 2015. So I've been talking with the current owner, and they are working away at various conditions and have met a number of the conditions of the 19 and that are attached to the report. And so they just need a little bit more time in order to finish off and then apply for final approval, hopefully within the year. And so I wanted to bring this extension forward at their request. And after having reviewed the file, I am recommending a 1-year extension for that owner who's actively carrying out condition finalization to finish up and seek final approval within the year. So that's my recommendation to you. And there's following up on that recommendation is that similar recommendations were made by your council to the County of Perth Council when they hear this request this coming Thursday.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Councillors, any questions or comments? Do we have anyone indicating that? No, no one interested in commenting on this one. Okay, great. Then I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that The Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of North Perth recommend to Perth County Council that a one-year extension of draft plan approval be given for the Terrier subdivision, file number NP10-01, part lot 34, concession 1, geographic township of Elma, Victoria Avenue South, Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and that in doing so, the draft plan approval for this development will lapse on July 15th or June 15th? Is it a year from today or a year from July? Fairfelds? Sally, is it?
July. It's July.
Thank you. So let me try that again. And that in doing so, the draft plan approval for this development will lapse on July 15th, 2021. Deputy Mayor Kellum, would you be willing to be our mover for that?
Yes, I'll move that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson as our seconder?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. We're missing somebody. Councillor Rothwell, we're not seeing your vote. What say you?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. So that is carried. For item 5.2.2, Council is invited to consider an application for the exemption of park lot control brought by Timothy James McKee. Ask North Perth planner Sean Yilmaz to introduce us to this one. Sean.
Thank you. The property owner, Timothy James McKee, is seeking approval for an exemption from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. An exemption from part lot control will establish 2 individual lots of record, each with 1 dwelling unit of a semi-detached dwelling to be conveyed separately. The subject property is identified as Lot 30 of Plan 44M-61 in the Listowel Ward and is located on Bolton Street. And it currently consists of 1 semi-detached dwelling which was recently built. The western parcel, identified as Part 1 and Part 2 on the reference plan, is 535.1 square meters or 5,750 square feet. And the eastern parcel, Part 3 and 4, is 393 square meters or 4,200 square feet, meeting the required lot area for individual lots. Both parcels have frontage along Bolton Street and each have individual service connections to municipal servicing. The property is within the residential 4 zone and both units meet the provisions and regulations of the North Perth zoning bylaw. The removal of part lot control to establish lot lines between 2 units of a semi-detached dwelling is an accepted method of lot control under the Planning Act. As such, it is staff's recommendation that Council approve the application for the exemption of part lot control by Mr. McKee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yilmaz. Councillors, any questions or comments before we consider resolutions? Clerk, anyone showing interest in asking questions? Okay. So, Council, I have 2 actions to consider at this point in time. The first is a resolution. The second is a bylaw. We're getting a little bit of feedback in the sound here. The resolution reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the application by Timothy James McKee for the exemption of part lot control property described as Lot 30, Plan 44M61, Listowel Ward, Bolton Street, Municipality of North Perth. If the proposed bylaw is adopted, it should be forwarded to the County of Perth for approval. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell as our mover for that?
Yes, I move. Yes.
Councillor Seiler, can I call on you to be our seconder?
Yes, I will second it.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on that resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. If you can mute yourself, someone out there is off mute. So that is carried. And then we have the bylaw that corresponds, the bylaw number 85-2020 being a bylaw to exempt from part lot control, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. And said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll make that motion, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstead is our seconder.
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or debate on the bylaw? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Rothwell, we're missing you again. What say you? Oh, there we go. I guess it came in. Okay, so that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 5.2.3, Council. Request addressed through a public meeting held last Monday for a zoning bylaw amendment related to the property at 760 Alder Street East in Listowel. With Planner Yilmaz, you can sort of bring back any updates and reorient us to this issue.
Yes, thank you. So last week we discussed an application for a zoning bylaw amendment on Alder Street East in Listowel, which requested a site-specific residential 1 zone to accommodate a proposed single detached dwelling while satisfying a condition of a related County of Perth application for consent. There was some confusion between the staff and the applicant regarding the future of the side access on the eastern side of the existing dwelling, which is located adjacent to the access for the newly created lot. Staff has had the opportunity to review the request to permit a modified set of steps to encroach into the required interior side yard setback, thereby allowing the existing dwelling to maintain its side entrance. Staff has had the opportunity to review the request further and has no concerns with the proposed encroachment. Staff is also confident that it has been addressed appropriately within the zoning bylaw amendment. If approved, the dwelling is permitted to have unenclosed steps and landing encroach into the side yard setback, so as long as there is a minimum of 0.6 meters or 2 feet between the steps and the property line. This will allow the existing side entrance to be maintained with a modified set of steps while ensuring that any future redevelopment of the retained parcel will observe the normal setbacks as required within the R1 zoning. As such, it is staff's recommendation that the Council of Municipality of North Perth approve the zoning bylaw amendment application. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Yilmaz. Councillors, before we read the bylaw, are there questions or comments at this point? Anyone wish to speak? Clerk Bearfelds? Okay, so I have a bylaw resolution then, Council, for our consideration. The bylaw number 14-2020 being a bylaw to amend the North Perth zoning bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I call on Councillor Behrens to be our mover for that.
Yes, I will move that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Duncan, would you serve as our seconder?
I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this matter? You know what to do. Reach out to Clerk Bearfelds. I'm not seeing any indication of that, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up is, let's see here, item 5.2.4. Council is invited to direct staff to prepare a development agreement with Lone Oak Properties Limited pertaining to a request to open a road allowance in the village of Atwood. I'll ask North Perth planner Sean Yilmaz to brief us on this request. Mr. Yilmaz, welcome back.
Thank you once again. Lone Oak Properties has been developing land toward the southwest part of Atwood for several years. This has progressed historically over 2 residential plans of subdivision. Plan 565, which is the majority of the lands, and Plan 44M-51, which is a newer plan and encompasses block 26 of the original plan. The property owner is interested in developing some of the existing vacant lots and blocks. However, requires permission from the municipality to open up block 27 of Plan 565 as it is currently within municipal ownership. The staff report explains most of the history of this current situation. However, block 27 is supposed to be a public road with a cul-de-sac as noted on both plans of subdivision. This will effectively provide public road frontage for a number of the blocks from the more recent plan 4451. Discussions between municipal staff and the municipal solicitor determined that the applicant, with the permission of this council, has the ability to open block 27 of Plan 565 and construct a public road to a municipal. A development agreement must be prepared, which the solicitor will arrange between the developer and the municipality to allow the work to progress. This development agreement will include provisions indemnifying the municipality of any liability during works and will include securities required and any other relevant information. Prior to proceeding with the preparation of this agreement, staff is requesting council to receive the staff report and to direct staff to advance the preparation of the development agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the report, Sean. Councillors, any questions or comments about this before I turn to our resolution? Bearfelds, any indication? No. Okay. So, Council, I have a resolution for this matter that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received a staff report titled Request to Open Road Allowance, and further, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth authorize staff to prepare a development agreement with the developer, Lone Oak Properties Limited, effectively indemnifying the municipality from any liability and identify any other pertinent information. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for that?
Yes, Mayor Todd, I would move that.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder?
And yes, I will second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We're hitting a point where it would be good for a bio break for the mayor. So I'd appreciate if we could have a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back in a few moments' time. So until let's see here, let's call it 9:05. We'll reconvene at that point in time. Everybody stay on. Okay, councillors, welcome back. Thank you for indulging me in a bio break. I did need that. At this time, we have no report indicated from our interim manager of recreation as item 5.3, but she's had a heck of a lot of fun over the last week or so. I say that with a certain degree of sarcasm intended. It's been a busy time for them as they've made a series of decisions and supports of decisions. And so I appreciate all of their efforts and all of their work as well, going towards making sure that a virtual Canada Day happens in our area. That brings us to item 5.4. As item 5.4.1, staff has brought forward for council review of accounts as of June 15th, 2020. I'll note that some councillors have declared a potential pecuniary interest in this item and will absent themselves from consideration and voting on this matter. Are there any questions from councillors about this report for our staff? Prefelts, anything? Okay, so I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows. The following summary of accounts be received by council for information. There's a lot of numbers. The total line is $1,569,376.02. Can I call on Councillor Richardson to be our mover for this one?
So moved.
Thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, will you second the motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate, council? Okay, let's have that vote. Who are we missing? Councillor Rothwell, we're not getting your vote. What say you?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. So that is carried. That brings us to item 5.4. For this item, council is invited to consider a report by staff pertaining to the introduction of an initiative to fund expansion of rural broadband internet access in North Perth. I will call first on North Perth Director of Finance Treasurer Frances Hale to introduce us to this matter, and following her, CEO Snell will have a few words. Welcome, Fran.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. At council's request, staff have been looking into how to address the underserved connectivity areas in our municipality. As you know, through the County of Perth, we are associated with Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology nonprofit organization known as SWIFT. Mr. Barry Fields, Executive Director for SWIFT, has provided us with information on our current status. It is estimated that there are 442,117 meters in North Perth that are considered unserved and do not meet the objective service levels of 50 down and 10 up with broadband connectivity. Those premises and businesses located in these underserved areas will continue to be disadvantaged with regard to their businesses, education, and community connectivity unless broadband infrastructure is expanded into their area. At this time, there is an opportunity to work with SWIFT and access their expertise to provide and to address the unserved areas in North Perth. If council is interested in investing in the expansion of broadband infrastructure in the rural area of North Perth, Mr. Fields has suggested 3 possible options for council to consider. The recommended 3rd option is to wait until SWIFT has selected a service provider for their project in Perth County. After this work is awarded, SWIFT would circulate an additional request for proposal based on the terms and investment council deems appropriate for North Perth. The cost estimate to address all the unserved road length in North Perth with the expansion of broadband broadband service is approximately $24 million. It is estimated that the server provider would continue to cover 1/3 of this cost, therefore leaving a funding requirement of $16 million. The example within the report was only looking at about a $5 million investment. Therefore, tonight I have added an additional schedule with Pat putting it at the end of the report here for council to look at. The schedule outlines investment and financing options for council consideration that cover off a wide range of possibilities, from looking at covering 1/3 to 2/3 to all of it, looking at whether we would finance all of it or some of it, looking at terms of years from 15, 20, 25, 30, and then showing you what the impact would have in terms of tax increases for the municipality to consider. Council, I know, is aware that the estimates that we're providing them this evening are just that, they're estimates, and they're not static. Construction costs and interest rates vary ongoing. Even the short term, or not the shorter term, I should say, it's a medium term really, for the 15 years, the interest rate from when I wrote the report last week to today has gone down a little bit. So through Infrastructure Ontario. So it is a variable cost. Certainly, when you look at a project and you look at financing it over 15 to 30 years, there might be some concern that this is too long a time frame. But it is thought that the current fiber technology, being the speed of light, it would be difficult or unlikely to be able to surpass this in this time frame. Another concern that is not noted in the report that I feel I need to bring to your attention is that any partial work, if completed as opposed to doing all of the work, it might be that it would be harder to entice a service provider to come back to invest in future coverage, assuming that the more sparsely populated road lengths would be the ones that would be left to the last. Council's consideration of this project is a significant pivoting point for protecting and supporting the advancement of the rural area in North Perth. And I thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Ms. Hale. CAO Snell. Chris, we can't hear you. Is Chris there?
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Thank you.
Sorry, this must be the issue of tonight being microphones. As council is aware, the issue of broadband connectivity has been a concern to our community for some time, but it's certainly been enhanced by the effects of COVID-19. As mentioned in Fran's report, COVID-19 has certainly brought to light the deficiencies in broadband service for our community, for students trying to complete their school year at home, as well as businesses trying to transition to a more technology-based economy throughout the pandemic. The issue of broadband has been a discussion at the Craig committees or groups, certainly discussed by all groups, but certainly highlighted in the agricultural Craig. I believe almost every member of the Craig committee has advocated for some sort of enhancement of broadband in North Perth. So I just wanted to bring sort of the immediacy that the community is looking at around this issue in light of the pandemic state we're in currently. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO Snell. Okay, councillors, no doubt questions and comments at this point. Let's have those. The clerk is taking the list. Who would like to go first? Councillor Behrens?
Hopefully you can hear me.
There we go. Yeah.
Again, the technology is troublesome. My concern, a couple of them. I live it every day, the problem with broadband technology and connectability and reliable connectability. My first concern is the financing part of it. And we were talking about using 1.5 million of our reserves from all services, which in any scenario is not a good one. Doing 20 to 30 years, we don't know what new technology is on the horizon. I could never vote for a situation that is going to tie up those kinds of funds for that long, based on what we know of technology today. I think this is almost premature, simply because we know that both the federal and provincial government, I mean, this is widespread all over Canada. And if they're bringing out a stimulus package, I would hate to think that we kind of jumped the gun and went ahead and we had to pay for it, but a stimulus package came out and we could have saved ourselves some dollars. So as much as, yes, I understand living in a rural area and the connectability challenges, totally understand it. Like I said, I live it every day, but my concern is really about the cost of financing and investing for a long period of time on technology that we only know is aware today. This isn't going to be fiber. This is going to be broadband. And to me, the cost is just too great for, this is the big thing that came along. We don't know what the next big thing is, and to go into debt, put the municipality in debt for this kind of money, I simply can't support it at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the speakers list? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alan got dropped from the meeting. He's trying to get back in right now, Councillor Rothwell. But I do have some comments. I agree with Julie. I'm very nervous on borrowing money out this far, especially in the uncertain times that we're in right now. I know that the broadband is needed. Man, I know it's needed so bad, but I'm just extremely nervous on what next year's budget is going to look like, and if we start borrowing, committing to money out 25, 30 years, man, I'm not sure anybody of us other than Councillor Seiler will still be on council then, but it's a big commitment to put money out that far. So I'm quite nervous, and I agree with Julie's points on this one. But I do agree the project is much needed.
Okay, just on, if I can call on the treasurer just to comment on project duration, because it seems to be one of the issues that's coming up now. Fran, what will you say about that?
Well, if you reference the schedule, you can see the payments, but it does make 2/3 of the project similar to all of it, given you go from 20 years to 30 years. But the technology, it could change, but then when you do look at it, the speed of light is quite impressive. It'll take some doing to surpass that. Fiber is definitely reliable. Now our cost estimate is $60 per meter, and that wouldn't necessarily be fiber in total. That's that would be an average, so it could be a little more costly. On the other hand, it might be more economical in a year when they go to do the work as well. So if you are going to ever borrow money for a project, now we're getting some pretty incredible rates, as you can see. But it is a big investment, that is for sure.
Councillor Richardson next.
Thank you. Through you, I tend to agree with what's been mentioned by Councillor Johnston Barons. Like, I understand how important this project is. It's of paramount importance, but given that next year's budget could be a bit of an eye-opener because we've had certainly some unprecedented events that have taken over. Pardon me. That I do. That's a lot of money to be amortized over that length of time, and obviously thinking that we don't know what the future could hold as far as like total cost for whether it be COVID or anything else. And I do understand that money is cheap right now, but I think that's a really, really big pill to swallow right at this point in time when there is so much uncertainty in every economy, not just ours.
Councillor Andreessen. Leanne, we're not hearing you.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Todd, through you. I'm actually going to take an opposite approach to the thinking around this, and that is actually thinking about what can we do? Because I feel like, there's a lot of concern about the debt load, and I do appreciate that, and I'm worried about that too, but I also am very concerned about our community. I'm very concerned that in doing nothing, we are just continuing to strap what our residents, what our business people, what our agricultural community needs, and they need it now. And they're telling us that these needs are absolutely critical for them to continue business here in our municipality. And for us to sit back and do nothing, it also worries me greatly. And I think we aren't going to, we aren't meeting the needs of our community if we aren't addressing this issue. I'm not saying that perhaps all of these options at the moment are, I'm not prepared to, accept these options at the moment, but I am prepared to say, I think we need to really look at this in a very deep way and continue some debate and look at what can we do. We are going to have to invest in some way to support our residents, because if we don't, they're going to leave us. They are not going to stay in our community. They're going to move on to the cities where they can study. They're going to move on to other districts where this technology is available. We have to look at what we can do to make business viable using this type of technology. And I just think we need to relook at it. It's going to take some time to investigate, and I really appreciate Fran's work so far. And again, looking at it deeper and looking at these options and perhaps other options is something that we need to continue to do. Thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, I guess, is more for you as our Swift representative. If we go with option 3, what are we looking at for a timeline on this? Can we incorporate this investment in next year's budget, or is this something we have to decide on, say, today?
Interesting question. Swift, the timeline that I anticipate, which is subject to provincial approval because we're still waiting on the province announcing its disposition towards a phase 3 project in Perth County. But the timeline that I anticipate, should the province take that action, would be a grant of awards by Swift for the phase 3 project sometime in January of 2021. I think, that can vary, of course, if the province doesn't come to the table with its part. Swift's timelines could be pushed back, but certainly that seems to be the grant date. And as you've heard, there is a notion that at that point, we might, if we pursue this option 3, then indicate at that point that we're prepared to go on with the next steps and use Swift as our mediating and adjudicating mechanism for any investment that this council would choose to make on behalf of the corporation. Does that answer your question, Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, it does actually, and it looks to me then like we could possibly incorporate this into this coming year's budget, and we wouldn't have to make the dollar figure decision tonight. Then.
That's fair. Yeah. Anyone else? Councillor Rothwell.
Councillor Rothwell got kicked out, and he's actually sitting beside me now. So he's going to computer.
Well, welcome back, Alan.
Well, how apt is this that we have a problem with the internet when we're talking about the need for more internet service? Anyways, thanks very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. I am, although in favor of the need for this work to occur, what my issue of concern is the timing and the amount of which we're being asked to consider this significant investment. We did talk about this at budget time, and I had expressed at that time my concern about the fact that we had a $21 million budget proposed, and the additional amounts I felt were of significant concern. I'm even more concerned now in terms of where we're at with the COVID impacts and so on, but I'm not speaking saying that we do not need to do anything. I'm just concerned about the extent of which that we may be looking at doing something, and that's my real concern. So I think I shared that concern previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone next? CAO Snell, would you like to weigh in on some of this?
Just one comment, and I've heard a little bit of discussion around the technology and will it be viable, or will it be the technology that we're still using 30 years from now? And by no means are Fran and I experts in the technology field. So I just wondered if council might consider if Barry from Swift would present something at an upcoming council meeting that might give council some comfort level in what technologies may be on the horizon, because I know in our first conversation with Barry, he shed some light on the whole 5G issue, which was very enlightening to me, because I suspect that's not coming as fast as what some people in the media portray it to be happening, and there are also some reliability challenges with that technology as well. So I just wondered if maybe in the future, if Barry's attendance at a meeting, whether it be virtually or in person, if possible, would be helpful for council.
That's a helpful suggestion, Chris, although I think a number of the concerns expressed related to the size of the spend that was proposed, which I'm not sure whether addressing the technological platform actually addresses the issue of the cost. But certainly, I think we'd be willing to entertain that unless any councillor is vehemently opposed. I find myself wondering whether, given sort of some of the comments made, whether we should consider having a council study group on this matter that would, take the opportunity to learn a little bit more and consider some of the issues. I, for one, am an unabashed supporter of getting this done. And I know that is, a brave and bold statement and vision for the corporation, but I believe that that we can't wait inordinate amounts of time, and that the opportunity for us to align with the SWIFT project's should everything be blessed by the province, is just too good to be true for our circumstances. So I don't think we should spend, years of study. This should not be a condition that we get ourselves twisting our tails around, nor should we wait on the federal government or the provincial governments to come to our rescue, because I don't believe they have the kind of resources that will do the whole country in a significant way, even though they talk big about it at this point. So, as from my take, I will say that I think that we need to be looking at this as this technology and these pathways are akin to roads. They're as essential to our community and its future as roads. And the opportunity perhaps to study this some more so that council can get comfort with a spend of this significance around technologies that many of us don't understand fully. Does make sense to me, but I think we need to put a timeline on this so that we have an up and down decision somewhere in the fall. Anyone else wishing to speak? So Councillor Andreessen has suggested that she likes the idea of further training and discussion. Are there any councillors who are vigorously opposed to the notion of essentially striking a whole committee of council to begin the process of training and learning more and discussing this matter over the course of the coming months so that we can look again at making a firm decision about this one way or the other in the fall? Any indication of, okay, so I think, Terry, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I respect all the comments that have been made here, but I do agree that we need to know where the province and the federal government's going to stand in this, so that if there is any kind of a beneficial that we can get from them to take part in to save our ratepayers some money is very important to us. So there's a few unanswered questions right now in my mind. So it's I don't mind searching more about it, but I did hear that Swift is bringing something out from the government, and that's all I've ever heard. So until we hear more, it's hard to make decisions. Thank you.
Sure. So I can comment on that as the Swift representative. The project that is contemplated for phase 2 and phase 3, phase 2 being the announced projects in Wellington, Norfolk, and Lambton counties, and the phase 3 projects, they've announced 5 or 6 at this point. We are in the phase 3 group for Perth County. These projects probably at the optimum, as I think I've mentioned before, will provide coverage to about 20% maximum of the remaining need. So that means that 80% of the premises kilometers that need to be passed will still not be passed through significant investments already by the province and the federal government. Certainly, I've been tracking, Terry, some of the comments from the federal government in particular, because they're of interest, right? As you say, if we can save our ratepayers dollars in this and get on the bandwagon. And the federal government has given various signals that that it is contemplating increased investment in broadband internet, but so far it's been mostly talk, and we're not seeing any details or any firm announcements about the scope of that. To cover all of southwestern Ontario, according to estimates from Swift, would be a project that would cost between $2 and $3 billion in just southwestern Ontario alone. And we're not alone in Ontario in the deficit for rural broadband. So there's a similar project called EORN, which is in the eastern Ontario area. And then there's a project up in northern Ontario also trying to address high-speed access. So, we're sort of one part of a very complex network or matrix of possibilities that the federal government needs to address, should address, but we just don't know when that will happen. I guess my only comments, Terry, is if we wait on the feds and the province on this in the long term, we could be at this 10, 15 years from now. And as was joked by a councillor already, perhaps you'll be the only one still on council at that point. So, Council, I regret putting aside the motion that we have because I believe we should be bold and decisive about this, but I will accede to the premise because it was a learning curve for me on Swift to become a capable director, that there is some learning needs that should be addressed and that we have the opportunity to study these as a council. So my suggestion at this point is that we consider an alternate resolution to the one that was posed, as I said, again, with my deep regret, that suggests that council directs staff to prepare a platform for a committee of all council to participate in studying a broadband internet future for North Perth. Now, can we get that supported? Councillor Seiler, would you move that for us?
Yes, I'll move that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as our seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debate? Let's have indication through the chat box to Clerk Bear-Phelps. No? Okay. So we have a modified motion. I probably couldn't repeat it if I tried. But I think Danette was working on that, the goal being that council will undertake study over the next several months and that staff is directed to support that process. So if it's duly moved and seconded, let's have the vote. Okay, that's carried. All right. Thank you, Council, for that. We have no reports indicated from our managers of environmental services and operations as items 5.5 and 5.6. Likewise, we have nothing from our fire chief tonight as items 5.7. So that brings us to item 6 on our agenda. Yes. Oh, we need to receive Treasurer Hale's report. Indeed. Thank you for bringing that out to me. So Council, let's consider a resolution just related to the report that we received that the North Perth Broadband Project, or NPBP report, be received by Council for information as presented. Can I call on Councillor Anstedt to be our mover for that?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thanks. And Councillor Behrens, will you second that one?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on that one? Okay, so seeing none, do you have a means of, thank you. Trusty Deputy Clerk, right on top of this stuff for us. Thank you very much. And we're missing one vote. Councillor Behrens votes. What say you, Councillor Behrens? Julie, are you with us still? There we are. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to agenda item 6. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or our committees? Again, the usual, if you would like to speak, have the floor, please indicate to the clerk through the chat box. Okay. Seeing no indication of that, we have received no additional items of correspondence beyond those shared in our consent agenda for any council action. That brings us to item number 8 on our agenda, which allows council to consider and enact bylaws. We have no further bylaw proposals we haven't dealt with, short of what lies ahead for confirmatory bylaw. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda. Are there any notices of motion from councillors attending this evening? Seeing no indication of same, that brings us to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? And if you'd like to speak, point it out to Clerk Bear-Phelps to the chat window. Deputy Mayor Kellum.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Todd. Last week in our business meeting, you briefly discussed what we're doing for July 1st. Can you just give everyone a brief update on that, please, so we're on the same page?
Sure. Thanks for the question. That was something I was going to raise because I expect councillors to engage in some of these wonderful opportunities. So recreation staffs from North Perth, West Perth, Perth East, and lately Perth South as well have combined some efforts and are collaborating with the Atwood Lions Club, and I believe Mitchell Rotary has come to the table as well to support a virtual or online Canada Day festival. There are actions that begin on June 25th and daily activities that run through until July 1st. They culminate on July 1st with actions, reasonably full day of activities that can be delivered through virtual and family and personal actions on people's own properties. So there's a number of things happening. I don't know, shall we turn over to Ms. Gangle? Is she with us still to give us a little bit more information at this point? Is Amy with us?
I am Mayor Kasenberg. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
All programmers and including our libraries and our early on community members, service clubs, municipalities, and other groups, the community has really come together to help, celebrate this Canada Day in a virtual way, and then celebrating our history of all the wonderful activities that our service clubs have done, the Atwood Lions, Mitchell Rotary, and trying to highlight those pieces with the intention of maybe encouraging people to come to the in-person events in 2021 or in our future. We're excited about it. We have taken this opportunity to come together and celebrate our nation and create some activities that are unique, as well as just some neat memories for people to share and stay connected that way.
Thanks, Amy. So there is an agenda of events coming soon. I don't believe it's posted yet on the website, but there's a dedicated page on the North Perth website about Virtual Canada Day, which features my video invitation, and here's my specific invitation to everyone. We've crafted sort of two alternatives to the traditional massive parade in Atwood that happens on Canada Day. The first is a craft float parade, which anyone can participate in, essentially taking a shoebox or a tissue box and decorating it up to represent your contribution to the virtual craft float parade. I've joked that we hope to have the biggest craft float parade in Canada on Canada Day, but in fact, it's quite likely that we have the only craft float parade on Canada Day. And I'm looking for as many contributions to this parade as possible. There's a full set of guidance and a submission form for your photos or videos of your craft float, which you can submit to our attention, and we will stitch them together and release a video on Canada Day of all these wonderful contributions, the art from our community, across businesses, across people, across families. So we hope that you'll get out your scissors and your construction paper and your paint and even your action figures and get them involved in building up these craft floats. As well, the Atwood Cafe has decided to jump in and take on what has traditionally been a pork chop supper in Atwood at the EMCC. This year, we're putting that on hold, but there will be a pork chop takeout dinner from the Atwood Cafe. It's booked in blocks of half hours. You pick up at the curb. You don't have to get out of your car. The food will be passed through to you, but you do have to indicate that you want tickets in advance. And any Atwood Lions member can help you with that assignment. And, there are a number of other wonderful activities that are planned over the course of those several days. The first is going to be a busy day, and we will have what we call the Canada Day excursion. We are asking the residents of Atwood to dress up their homes in red and white, and we'll shoot a live stream video moving down the streets of Atwood to show the people and the homes of Atwood decorated for Canada Day. If you will, a reverse parade, although we hate to use the word parade in that context. And finally, for those of you who think you are better than a grade 5 or grade 6 kid, I think there was a TV show about that a few years back. I am going to host an online virtual trivia contest about Canada on Canada Day. So anyone who wishes to join and try their luck at some really challenging Canadian trivia are welcome to join me. And I think that's at 2:30 in the afternoon. So there's a number of wonderful activities coming up on Canada Day. We are being very respectful of the regulations that have brought us to really innovative online programming for the day. And I look forward to greeting as many people as we can and having as many participants as we can. And Council, we'd really love your floats too. So work with your grandchildren, work with your children. There's fine opportunity here to create something really special and unique. I can tell you, by the way, that Mr. Nader is going to be entering the float from his kids. So we're delighted to have his contribution. Any other questions or announcements under section 10.1 of our agenda? Anyone showing any interest? Okay. We do not have any matters to consider in a closed session this evening, which means we can move past section or item 11 and item 12 on our agenda. And that brings us to our confirmatory bylaw. I'll note again that Councillor Behrens and Deputy Mayor Kellum have elected not to participate for pecuniary interest declaration purposes. The Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called a confirmatory bylaw. I have the draft for that in front of me, which reads as follows: that bylaw number 86-2020, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for that?
So moved.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And so that brings us to that wonderful point in the meeting where we've completed the deliberations and taken action on all the business that was before us tonight. Before I read a motion to adjourn, is there any further urgent business? Anything, Clerk Bearfield? Okay. Seeing none, I have a motion to adjourn, which reads as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 9:48 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, June 22nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. Deputy Mayor Callum, can I call on you to move that one?
Yes, I'll move that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, will you serve as our seconder?
I will second that.
Thank you. Let's have that vote. We're missing someone. Mr. Behrens, what say you?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. That motion is carried. That means we are adjourned. This council will meet in regular council meeting again using digitally enabling technologies on Monday, June 22nd, 2020. Get your floats in, people. Until then, until next time, thank you for your participation.
Mayor Todd, can you get us all the links